Hello, Steve White, Steve White's A9. Well, it's August 16, it's Madonna's birthday. I just wanted to wish her a happy birthday by pondering her position as Queen. Now, I was just noticing a post that there's a few of these floating around. It says, as of 2025, Madonna is still the most successful female artist of all time, with over 400 million records sold, more than 1.7 billion combined concert gross. Now, posts like this exist because Taylor Swift fans are pointing out that in a short time, assuming her record sales continue with, things like her ripping off Kylie Minogue's Showgirl era, but we won't talk about that, Taylor Swift will surpass Madonna in record sales. But the thing is, they're counting Spotify and YouTube streams as sales. Now, I know they've been doing this for a while, but I hadn't really looked at the dates or the numbers, and someone was pointing these out, and I just wanted to talk about it. In 2012, Billboard started counting streams like Spotify and YouTube for the Hot 100 chart. In 2014, Billboard added streaming to the album chart, the Billboard 200. In 2013, the RIAA, the group that gives gold and platinum awards in the US, started counting streams towards sales. I didn't realize they'd done that. I thought they were still keeping it separate. That's kind of shocking. In 2016, the RIAA made it official that 1,500 streams equals one album sale, and 150 streams equals one song sale. So around 2012 to 2016, streaming became a major part of how music success is measured. I think it's more how popularity is measured, but we'll get into that. So, in things like iTunes, Madonna still has good sales. Like Gone, Gone, Gone and Veronica Electronica were number one in the actual physical sales chart. But they didn't really get into the overall chart because the streaming numbers were down. Now, why are things like this happening? Now, when you look at things like Spotify only requires 30 seconds of listening to a song for it to be considered like a stream. And with things like mass looping, autoplay, and playlists on Spotify, it's very easy to rig these things. And that may sound a bit cynical, but the reality is fans are doing this, and record labels are doing this. They're getting fans and bots to do stuff like this. And you can manipulate the Spotify numbers. You can manipulate the streams. You can't fake a record sale, because back in the day, records were physically created. A unit was created. It was sent out to records stores and bought by fans. They paid cash. They took it home. They listened to it a million times. And those who weren't counted, that sale only got counted as one sale. So all the Madonna CDs I've bought over the years, and I've bought all their albums at least twice. I bought them secondhand and that to replace ones that were worn and stuff like that. See, Taylor Swift fans wouldn't do that. And that doesn't get counted. And I've listened to those songs, those albums, thousands of times. And then I've added them to my iTunes, and I've listened to those thousands of times. And that doesn't get counted. So what streaming that really is a measure of popularity. How often people are listening to the songs. And the only reason why it gets counted as a sale is because people don't own those units, those recordings are owned by, Spotify and YouTube and that, and the fans are just like leasing them or renting them or watching them, and the artists get paid something for being on Spotify and being on YouTube and that, but it's not the same as a record sale, and they're not making as much money for one, but it just doesn't count the same way. Like, if you counted all the times that, like I said, Madonna fans listen to her albums on vinyl or CD, or her videos on VHS and DVD, and if all those times we played stuff and listened to stuff were counted, it again would just be a measure of popularity. But you can't compare the two. You just can't count those eras. And there's really no way to compare it. Now, the good thing about that is Madonna's position as Queen will never be usurped, because Taylor Swift can never sell as many albums as Madonna has, or units as Madonna has, because that infrastructure just doesn't exist anymore. And Madonna will never be as popular on streaming as, the contemporary girls. And in 20 years, there's going to be some other girl that all the little kids are listening to instead of Taylor Swift. Does that mean Taylor Swift doesn't matter anymore, that she never mattered? No, she's not going to be the Queen, because she never was. And that title, once crowned the Queen or the King, like Michael Jackson and Elvis and Madonna, that title doesn't go away. can't renounce it. It's just, she's the queen, always will be. She's not the most popular artist anymore. That's fine, because she was the most popular artist for decades. So it's okay, because like I said, in decades Taylor Swift will still count. These sales, this popularity will still count. And it doesn't mean those fans don't matter, because now whatever the current format is that all the kids are listening to, there's some other artist on there that is getting all the attention. And now when you look at album sales, there's that. But when you look at concert sales, comparing the money there is even worse, because back in the day, because we're talking about units and record sales with albums, but concerts often look at gross. And they really should be looking at attendance, because if you want to count out how many people have watched Madonna live, there's a lot more of them than Taylor Swift. Now, back in the day, Madonna tickets may have been selling for like $20, whereas today they're selling for $200 or $2,000. So you can try and add inflation, but that's really tricky to get that right. So they really need to be focusing on attendance, not sales, because, you know, Madonna may be charging as much for tickets now to run tours at the same time as Taylor Swift, but 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, you know, people were buying tickets, particularly, you know, the nosebleed seats and, you know, the seats further back, for like $10 or something. I don't know. It was like tiny amounts. I remember looking at someone talking about going to see the Virgin tour and seeing how much they paid for their tickets, and I was like shocked, because, you know, how much things have changed price-wise. So you have to, you know, look at these things properly. And yes, Taylor Swift is the most popular artist at the moment. Madonna is no longer the most popular artist. That's fine. Although, if you went back and counted all the older fans who are still listening to her vinyl and her CDs and her DVDs and, you know, their iTunes and everything, I think you'd find a lot of those fans are still listening to Madonna every day, but that doesn't get counted. And because it doesn't make any money for the record companies, they don't care. Whereas Taylor Swift, through Spotify and YouTube, is still making money through that format. And it is kind of dodgy, because, like I said, you can rig it. And back in the day, Lady Gaga got called out by the president of Billboard because she was posting or sharing links to playlists that would play her song for like 30 seconds, like 150 times, then start over again. And that's how she pushed Born This Way into #1. And she got called out for that back in the day. And then they changed how they counted things, and it affected the whole industry. And that's one of the reasons why she has a bad reputation with a lot of people, because we were there for that. We saw that happen in real time. A lot of her fans don't even know about that today. But there were things like that were happening, and you can sort of rig and fudge those things, and it really should just be a measure of popularity. Taylor Swift is the most streamed artist. That matters, that counts. But it's not the same as, you know, selling records and sales. So it's just interesting. These things should be kept separate, and counted separately, treated differently. But like I said, they're both, you know, proof of both artists' popularity. And you can't really measure that. You can't really judge that. You can't say Taylor is better than Madonna and Madonna is better than Taylor. Madonna was first. She was the first queen. She's always going to be the queen of pop. And just this idea that the latest, most popular person is the queen of pop. And I'm like, no. They're just the most popular person of the moment. Maybe if they held that for 40 years, 30, 40 years, maybe you could consider them some sort of royalty. But Madonna's the original, and you just can't take that away. Elvis is always going to be the king of rock and roll. Michael Jackson's always going to be the king of pop. Madonna's always going to be the queen of pop. I'm not sure who the queen of rock is. I think it's Tina Turner. But yeah, I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. It's the first time I've seen anyone actually lay out a timeline of when this happened and go into some of the specifics of how an album sale is measured, because I did notice this a while ago. And the other thing that drives me nuts, and this affected Madonna's last album because it wasn't #1 on one of the charts, because if you have 10, I think it was 10 songs sell, it counts as an album sale. And when they had there was a soundtrack album. It was various artists. You had all these people buying these different artists, and that was counted as one album sale. Although, you know, these were artists from like 10 different fan groups buying for 10 different artists. So they started counting, you know, compilations and various artists albums differently after that, because it was the soundtrack to, I think, that show that Juicy Smollett was in. God, I can't remember. God, I didn't. This isn't part of my notes. I didn't rehearse this part, but yeah, that stopped Madonna's. Was it No, it wasn't Madam X. It was Rebel Heart that didn't get number one on one of the charts because it was usurped by a soundtrack album, because there was 10 artists that sold more units of individual singles than Madonna sold, and that really wasn't fair, and they did recognise that and change it after that. So there's a lot of little things like that that took a while to sort out how to measure streaming, but it still shouldn't be counted the same and measured the same. I just had to say that, and it's 10 minutes now. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the current way they measure, sales and popularity, and how those things should be kept separate.